But evidence clearly supports the conclusion that regional dialects played a major role in shaping earlier southern roots of African American English. Furthermore, as indicated in work by some of our staff, Janine and Sarah and so forth in the eastern part of the state, and the folks I mentioned before in the western part of the state and so forth. It continues to play an important role. Regionality has definitely been underplayed by linguists. And it's one of those sort of deconstructing things where we were so enamored by the common core of features, which is not to dispute that common core, that we forgot about the regional context. And believe me, the African American community has not forgotten that regional context. All right, trajectories have changed. We love our idealized trajectories of change, but the fact of the matter is, even since Eric Thomas's and my discussion of sort of how African American English has intensified, and the regional variety has declined in Hyde County, in Beach Bottom we found that the African American English variety was declining precipitously, all right? So the point of complete accommodation. At the same point, we also have curvilinear trajectories. Wow, where it looks like they are acquiring more, and then they decline. So as you see in the second V on the handout. Well, that was begrudging. See, I don't want to admit that, but so we can't assume that there's even a unilateral sort of thing. Okay. All right. So these are the sorts of things, and in order to show you another video to conclude it, I'm going to forego some of these things, except to say that one of the things that Muse O'Brien and others also instruct us about on page 4 of number 4 is there's considerable individual variation within small, rural, southern African American communities that suggest that linear outlines of change are at best idealized profiles and at worst misleading overgeneralizations of change. All right, and then we talk about all the things that must go into it, which range from sort of contacts with external African American communities and so forth. And the size of the community, values within the community. So we see, for example, communities of practice may indicate that a middle-aged population either declines or intensifies African American features. All right. The last point that I want to make is the role of social linguistic engagement in the linguistic South. Whether it be informal formal education, whether it be addressing specific ideologies such as Alzheimer's and so forth, or issues of forensic linguistic, language and cultural revitalization, and the relations that we have with the communities who fuel our theories and provide us data. And I've come to this conclusion after fiddling with education and trying to get to the public. We certainly need informal public education, but until we infiltrate formal education, I think it's going to be an incredibly uphill battle to sort of preach the gospel of linguistic diversity. All right. And then some of the gaps in the linguistic study of the South. It's kind of interesting because the Tulsa surveys, focus on urban areas of the South. Our community studies and other community studies, and there's a good tradition of community studies now, focus on the rural South, but none of the surveys do that, and none of the intensive studies, or few of the intensive studies, there are exceptions as we heard here in terms of Atlanta, the incipient work there and so forth. But we do need nice surveys, not just 2 respondents in Raleigh. We need to go into these communities in some of the ways sort of that we've revised and know better about from the 60s when we did our surveys. All right. Incipient dialect communities such as what we're learning about the formation of Latino communities, where it's a great laboratory for understanding the formation of new sociocultural varieties. One of the things that I regret is that there are too few applications of formal linguistics to language variation in the South. You know, a couple of years ago, Gert Rapelhout and Claire Dannenberg looked at personal datives and found that it didn't fit in principles and parameters, but there were ways in which construction grammar could address it, and that these data help refine our understanding of formal grammars. Assumptions, categories, and methodologies. And if I had time, I would tell you a story, but I won't tell you a story unless you request it in the question. And then, of course, there is the engagement challenge, which we talked about this morning. We talked about some yesterday, and is ever before us given a responsibility. Well, one of the things that I really like about working on Southern English, with the exception of the study of African American English, and we hope we can do better in the future, is that there's been a nice collaborative spirit, and that people tend to complement each other rather than compete in terms of theories, which is not to mean we don't have disagreements, we do. But there is a sense of collaboration and also a sense of celebration. And I see no reason why we can't study and celebrate at the same time. In conclusion, what I would like to do is play you. We have a new documentary that's going to air in North Carolina as a supplement. We're going to tag along with Robin McNeil's "Do You Speak American?" And we're going to do a segment on the dialects and the languages of North Carolina, which includes Spanish, Cherokee, Lumbee, Mountain dialect, coastal dialect, the cities of North Carolina, and so forth. And I'd just like to show you, one of the things we try to do in this is celebrate the heritage of this variety. I'm going to show you the last part, and we only have 30 minutes of the hour done, but we've just been working on celebrating African American spoken language traditions of African American English, which then segues into our concluding remark, which happens to be made by someone who was a participant at this conference. Okay, so if we'll play that, we'll sort of make this the concluding statement.